The year is 1999. Y2K is in full force and the whole world is getting ready for the onset of a new millennium. Liberia is descending into its second civil war, while South Africa is holding a successful second election post-apartheid. Charles Taylor of Liberia was consolidating military regime, whilst Mandela was calmly stepping down as South Africa's president, leaving a legacy of an African icon. Both of these leaders will definitely be remembered for decades to come in Africa, albeit for vastly different reasons. These two are still examples of good and bad leaders, and today we explore ethical leadership and the ramifications of having good or bad ethical leadership. Evidently, ethical leadership is quite relevant, but first we need to discuss what it is. Ethical leadership is eloquently summarized as the demonstration of normatively appropriate conduct through personal actions and interpersonal relationship, and the promotion of such conduct to flourish through two-way communication, reinforcement, and decision-making. This will be the working definition henceforth. As a leader, one's position is elevated beyond personal considerations, as the action of said leader have far-reaching effects. With these definitions and framework in mind, it will serve us well to explore people that exemplify ethical leadership or the lack of it. Charles Taylor is quite infamous for his exploits as president of Liberia. His regime came about as a result of a coup against his once comrade Sam Doe, who he used to serve under. Taylor came as charismatic, vibrant, and ready to take the voice of the people and enact what the people wanted. He had the backing of many because of the way Sam Doe was running the country. He successfully took over in 1997 under the pretense of the Messiah. Little did the people know the monster they had exalted. Charles' regime was genuinely terrible. His treatment of people could be considered a humanitarian crisis. He took power by force, and it was evident in his leadership. His distrust made him target former allies for elimination in anticipation of betrayal. His selfish interest led him to loot the country and sell natural resources such as diamonds to fund personal ambitions. In short, he fully represented a leader with zero ethics. Taylor was without question a disaster to Liberia, and it showed in his lack of basic decency. Upon drafting the Abuja Peace Agreement, Liberia was supposed to transition into periods of peace. However, Charles blatantly reneged on the accords. This was a highlight of his lack of ethics. He had no interest in honoring his part of the deal since it was not beneficial to him. This also portrayed a total disregard for the welfare of the people he was supposed to lead. That was not why he came to power. The most shameful feat of his was the ethical scapegoating he employed. There was an existing divide between the indigenous people and the slaves that were brought to Africa post-slavery. He blamed the Mandingo and Crown ethnic groups for the regime's miserable performance. He was not ready to take responsibility for his actions, but instead chose to fracture Liberia further. These just highlight the lack of standards of this man. Mandela needs little introduction. His feats in the fight against apartheid are unmatched, and his effort post-apartheid further elevates his status. Fun fact, Nelson is not even his real name. It was given to him by a school teacher who was white, hence was unable to pronounce his name, Rulilala Dalibunga. Mandela grew up in an unfortunate time for South Africa. Due to the formal adoption of apartheid in 1948, black South Africans were entirely disenfranchised. Notwithstanding, Mandela began actively fighting against this racial discrimination. However, he was captured and sentenced to life in prison before he could do much. During his 27 years there, his reputation grew exponentially, and the whole world became aware of the fight he was fighting, and the opposition to apartheid gained more support. The ethical excellence of Mandela was most apparent in his handling of things post-apartheid. Even though the law was formally scrapped, its effect on the people was much too deep to ignore. He knew new laws would not solve the problem. The black South Africans really felt hurt by the discrimination at the hands of their fellow white countrymen. Mandela, being the man he was, used his considerable rhetoric skills to appeal to the people. He primarily spoke to their ability to empathize. Empathy was the all-powerful tool Mandela used to appeal to the people and ensure positive growth in them. He pleaded with them to put themselves in the proverbial shoes of others, to feel their pain as they do, and equally their joy. The point was to elevate the people from being just a race and primarily different people, to allow them to see the commonalities that lay between them after all. In doing this, Mandela began the healing process to unite the fractured people. Charles Taylor and Nelson Mandela led very different lives as leaders, but some parallels can be drawn between Liberia and South Africa, and the same for Taylor and Mandela. For one, there was a common issue of fractured people. The white South Africans never mingled with the blacks like equals. In the same way, the free slaves and the natives of Liberia never merged into one people. This disunity was reflected in the imbalance of power, which led to inhumane concepts. The fight in both African countries was just for respect. Mandela and Taylor fought for this, but while Mandela was pleading with the collective conscience of South Africa, Taylor was contributing to the divide in his country. The regimes prior to Mandela and Taylor were far from desirable. Sam Doe was pillaging the country and systemically butchering the people. South Africa also had a ruling faction bent on doubling down on the separation of the black and white South Africans. These two leaders were thus fighting for the people. The people believed in them to bring them out of their current situation to a better one, but Taylor had other ideas. This led to Liberia deteriorating even more under his rule. On the contrary, South Africa was starting to grow in unity as a people under Mandela. The relevance of ethics is most ostensible when the characters of Mandela and Taylor are put next to each other. These two had a very similar personal arsenal, as they were both very eloquent and charismatic. What they did with this power is where the discrepancies start to show. Taylor was convincing people to come to arms, while Mandela was attempting to foster fellow feeling. With no moral compass and ethics, it's clear how poorly Charles Taylor's powers were used. Mandela cared for his people, he had their interests at heart, and the ethics and moral pillars led him to do what he did. Taylor was clearly devoid of any of these. By now, it is obvious how crucial ethical leadership is to the betterment of any people. The past guides our actions to the present and future. We can only learn from the mistakes of eras gone. Looking ahead, we must realize how key it is to have future leaders with a solid moral compass to guide their steps. They should be devoid of selfish interests and willing to put the people first. The only way to move forward is a progressive path. Africa needs to look to better days, and the necessary leaders are required for this. To be clear and succinct, we need ethical leaders. Thank you.